Welcome to r/PettyRevenge, where this woman comes up with a genius way to stop her roommate from stealing her food. I put vegetables in all my food to stop my roommate's kid from eating it. Mum threatens legal action. I, a 26-year-old woman, live in a rented house with a single mother, who is 30, and her 6-year-old son. I had another person living with me, but they moved out and the mother moved in. I don't mind living with her and her kid. It's fine, and we kind of do our own thing. I spend a lot of time at my boyfriend's place or working. Our work schedules collide, so we really don't interact much, but when we do, it's fine. No issue there. I want to start with saying that she clearly struggles financially, but I don't think that's an excuse. I don't make lots of money either. However, I've noticed that my food would go missing, or portions would be taken from it. I assumed it was her kid, so I asked her if she'd stop him from eating my food. I was calm about it, and she just said that she would. It didn't really upset me when it first started, but it started getting annoying when I'd get home from work and expect to have a meal's worth of leftovers in the fridge, only to see it picked through or just gone. I kept bringing it up, and she started getting annoyed with me bringing it up. Just from observing them, I realized that neither of them ever ate vegetables. And judging by the food that would get picked through and the food that would be untouched, anything with green in it was avoided. Orange chicken would be gone, but chicken and broccoli would be untouched. So, I started putting vegetables in everything. Now, I find vegetables to be delicious, and anything green or not a potato doesn't get eaten. So I could mix some bell peppers into the food and it would be fine. I make a big portion of vegetables pretty frequently anyway, so I just started putting in everything I eat. If I had leftover mashed potatoes, I'd pour green beans in and mix it up. If I had leftover cheesy/bacon fries, I'd pour broccoli all over it and mix it in. Usually my homemade stuff has vegetables in it, but I started making sure that everything did. I made a pot of mac and cheese, the kids' favourite thing, and poured in roasted Brussels sprouts, which is actually delicious to me, and I'm eating more vegetables, so it's a win-win. Now, the mum had been seeming annoyed, but we were all home when I made the pot of mac and cheese. She was in the living room and saw me get out the Brussels sprouts and was like, "What are you gonna do with that?" as I poured them in. She said I was being greedy and annoying. I just said, "I like Brussels sprouts," and that was it. She then said, "We need food," so I told her to go and get some. Or stop buying only pre-packaged things and your money will go further. I think she sees this as some big act of revenge, but I just simply want to be able to eat my food. I also want to add that the sharing is not the issue. It's that I expect to have food there and it's not. So often I'd be working a long day and get home expecting to have a meal's worth of food and it will be gone. Or I wake up in a rush and have my food ready to eat the next morning only to find it gone. So now I have to skip breakfast. If she would simply text sometimes, "Hey, is it okay if we eat said food item?" I would at least know and know to make other plans. I would stop for food, or now I have to whip something up when I get home. Also, I think eating the last of someone else's food is crazy and rude. If someone makes a big pot of something and you ask for a serving, sure. But if someone made something and there is one serving left and you eat it without permission, that is evil as hell. Okay, so that is the story so far, and thankfully there is an update coming, so we're gonna see what happens next. But just off the bat, I've gotta say, if someone is stealing food from you, I don't want any excuses. It's terrible. It really is. I get what OP is saying about if they eat the last of someone's food, like if they have the final portion, that's the worst. But even if they have the first portion, if I've made a batch of food, I expect to eat that batch of food, right? I've done it for myself. If I come back and some of it's gone, I'm going to be fuming, of course. And look, I do understand OP's point that if the mum at least asks first, then she would know. But still, like, make your own food. Come on, it's not that hard. Okay then, so here is the update. So, I've been steadfast with putting vegetables in everything. I put vegetables in things I've never even thought of. This has carried on, and the mum calls me a jerk, but will not verbalise that she is eating my food. She just sees me making a lasagna and adding celery and bell peppers in the layers, and she fumes off to the side. The only thing I can't add vegetables to is snacks like chips or if I bake brownies or cookies. However, this is easily remedied by putting baked goods in a Tupperware and keeping them in my room. Same with chips. As I previously stated, the sharing isn't the issue. Recently, the kid knocked on my door and asked if he could have a bag of microwave popcorn. I said yes and gave him one. All of this would be way less annoying if she'd just texted, "Hey, can I have some of this?" and waited for my response before just helping herself. I do feel for the mum because she clearly struggles with cooking and trying new foods. She is older than me and winces at the thought of biting into anything green, and it's spreading to her kid, but that's no excuse. A few days ago, I was making taco meat out of ground beef, and like usual, she was looking without looking. She was off to the side watching my every move, but trying her best to look normal. I made a dish the day before that involved sauteed mushrooms and cut up peppers. So when the meat was almost ready, I opened the fridge, and she freaked when she saw me holding the mushrooms. She said, "My son hates mushrooms." And I just pulled them in the pan and mixed, along with the cut up peppers. This caused her to react in a way I'd never seen from her before. She was yelling and stomping around the kitchen while the kid just watched. I felt bad for the kid to have to see his mum like that. Now before, people were worried about her tampering with my food. I don't think she's the kind to do that, but if she did, I'd report that right away. She was flipping out, but she didn't snatch my food or knock anything over. She was opening and slamming cabinets, and it was all very silly. Then she started going off about how she's going to get the authorities involved. I just told her, sure, and that she needs to relax. She seemed genuinely upset and stressed, and I told her that I understand being a single mum is hard, but she needs to use her government assistance more responsibly. She'll come home with cold mac and cheese, sushi, and chicken from the grocery store prepared foods and blow all of it on that. I suggested food pantries and buying ingredients that last a while, like potatoes. She said I was being condescending and I always have food to eat. This is to address the just make a portion of your food and set it aside for her and the kid. I do not make enough money to regularly feed 2 other people. If every now and then she asked for some of my leftovers, sure, but this is a consistent thing that was happening. It's not as simple as giving her leftovers that I won't eat anyway. If I make a pot of something, I expect to live off of that for the next few days. If it's eaten, then my money is messed up, and I have to go shopping again and budget for more food, wasting my time and money. Yeah, once again, I completely agree. I think it's ludicrous that anyone in the comments is saying, oh, why can't you just make a little bit of food for 2 extra people? I mean, that's a lot of food, especially if you're doing, multiple meals per week. That's insane. And even if you're not struggling with money, that is another huge expense. It shouldn't be just on you to have to deal with them when the mum is the one that's responsible, of course, for her and her child, for cooking and making sure they're well fed, and for not blowing her money on things that aren't sensible. When money's tight, and you can't just buy takeaways or buy, pre-prepared stuff. You need to spend it on more sensible stuff and perhaps spend more time actually doing the cooking and make bulk meals with cheaper ingredients that last for longer. I don't know. I'm not a single mum, as you can probably tell, but in many ways, I feel like I am. I mean, it is very simple. She's just asking you, well, she's not even asking, she's just stealing your food. So it is actually theft. Just happens to be your roommate, your housemate. The kids actually seems quite nice, by the way, like knocking on your door saying, hey, can I have some microwave popcorn? That is very nice. And I would absolutely encourage that and say, you know what? Yeah, sure. But the mum being angry at you for putting mushrooms in a pan, no thank you. Ex lies during divorce to have me jailed and instead is left with remorse. I was getting divorced in the early 90s. My ex was fuming that I was divorcing him. I owned the house prior to the marriage, so he moved out, but he broke back in and tore up all kinds of things. He tore up my jewelry, my clothes, he cut holes in all of them, etc. I couldn't prove it, but of course it was him. When we went to divorce court, he gave the judge a 2-page list of things that he supposedly brought to the house with him prior to marriage that I refused to return. My attorney showed me the list, and it was stuff that he never owned in the first place. He totally wanted me thrown in jail for contempt of court. My alternative was to pay like $2,000, and I wasn't about to do that. So in a way, I guess I opted for jail. But my friends kept telling me to just pay it. I refused though. 2 days before I was to appear in court, a girlfriend of mine asked me if she could see the list. Sure. She noted that the things he said were there didn't give much, if any, of a description. For example, he says there's a gun, but doesn't say what kind of gun. He said there was a computer, but not what kind of computer, and so on. Her point was that if I went around and bought everything on the list, it would probably cost me about $200, and that was worth staying out of jail. I agreed, knowing it would also be worth him being livid that his plan didn't work. So I made a game of it. I went around to pawn shops and resale stores, and I told whoever was in charge there that I was on a scavenger hunt, and I briefly explained what was going on. They all loved the idea and helped me get through the list rather quickly. Here are some lovely examples of what was boxed up for him. So, for the gun, I got an old rusty cap gun. For the screwdriver set, same, old and rusty. For clothing, I got Goodwill horrid stuff. For the bust/statue, I made one myself from clay. For knives, again, old and rusty. For camping gear, an old pan, matches, and a tiny tarp. And one of my favourites that I remember was, he said he had a Monopoly game. So I sent him a Goodwill find without any of the pieces, just the board. I wish I could remember everything that we got. It was so much fun. And when we got home, we had to videotape boxing them all up and going through the items one by one. My attorney told the judge that I'd found them in the attic and just hadn't seen them before. So sorry. The judge told my attorney to simply drop the box off at his attorney's office and that the divorce was final. My only regret is not being able to see his face when he opened up that box of garbage. And there was nothing he could say because he made the stuff up in the first place. It's been 30 years and I still get joy thinking about it. Oh wow. Imagine his face when he opens that box. I mean, what a terrible person anyway to make up all this stuff and lie about it. But you're right. I can imagine it would have got very, very techie, like, you know, a little bit convoluted if it had become a he said, she said sort of stuff where he was saying, no, I had all this stuff, she's stolen it. And you were saying, never had it in the first place, because there's no real way of proving anything. I guess maybe you could argue that you could go and look for receipts, but say these products are super old. This could have been really, really technical. But doing this, there's literally nothing he can do about it, right? There's nothing he can do because he has the items that he said he owned. Obviously he didn't, and they're terrible. Simple as that. Great PettyRevenge, and a very, very good way to avoid jail time yourself and absolutely mug him off. I love it. And now for our next PettyRevenge story. How about this for a title? My homeless dad used me in his money scheme, so I took it all. Okay, so the homeless guy is technically my dad. My dad was only in my life actively from ages 0 to 7, and in that time gave me a load of trauma. He was a hardcore alcoholic manipulator and a lot of other things I can't say. My mum, being the badass that she is, left him, and for a short bit we did weekends at his place. It was a never-ending cycle of him drinking, being a POS, and then buying us over with animals and gifts. After getting several DUIs, unpaid child support, and a few child endangerment cases, he up and left to avoid going to jail. Like, disappeared. Left the animals locked in the house that he abandoned and shut off his phone. Every few months or so, he would randomly show up at my school drunk and crying with gifts in hand, or leave notes on our door. My school literally had to implement a safety plan because my mum was scared he would take me. That then stopped, and we didn't hear from him for about 13 years. When I was 20 years old, he messaged me on Facebook saying he'd love to get to know me and asking if there's anything I need financially. My initial response, sick to my stomach and crying, quickly turned to anger. I was broke and really could use the money. And I mean, he owed me, right? I told him I would meet and needed money for rent. When I saw him, my stomach turned. He looked like the crazy guy you see on the side of the road begging for money. He really didn't make much sense, just talked a lot of trash about my mum, saying she was a liar and turned us against him and mumbling nonsense. Apparently, his brother, my uncle that I never had a relationship, would no longer give him money, but would wire transfer him money for me. He told his brother I needed 1,500 and told me he would take 500 and give me 1,000. His terrible burner phone ran out of minutes, so one of the calls to his brother was made from my phone. Of course, he didn't have an ID or anything, so I would need to pick it up with him. When someone wires you money, they get a code, then give you the code and voila, you get the money. My dad wouldn't give me the code until we were physically at the place to pick it up, which we planned to do the following morning. The next morning, I decided to text my uncle, since I now had his number, and ask him directly for the code. So I got the code, picked up the money, and blocked my POS dad. He made sure to leave me some deranged voicemails about how big of a POS I am. But he pretty much used me to get money from his brother. If he really wanted to be in my life, he would have taken the proper steps to do so and change. But he never did. Not denying what I did wasn't trashy, but also, screw my dad. I mean, yeah, this is brilliant. Your uncle has explicitly said that he's only sending the money to you. Your dad is just being the make-weight, trying to use both of you to get a little bit of cash to help him. But he doesn't deserve that. Ultimately, he's pretty much frauding both his brother and you. So you going behind his back and doing this, although admittedly, yeah, you could argue it's a little bit trashy. How about the years of neglect and trauma that he calls you, and the fact that your uncle has openly said the money is for you and not for your dad? I think that's completely fair. And yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it's petty revenge or if it's even revenge at all. Sounds like he left you with a lot of trauma, as I said, and this is just one decent way of getting back at him and making sure that he doesn't get into your life anymore. So poor from him. After 13 years away, to call you up saying, oh, I miss you so much, do you want some money? Realistically, just trying to get money for himself. Disgusting human being. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of Petty Revenge. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you want more revenge stories right away, check out the playlist down below. It includes some of my best ever episodes from this subreddit. If you are new to the channel, please do hit the subscribe button or the follow button on whatever platform you're on for daily Reddit content. And I'll see you guys all with the next one tomorrow.